Now introducing the Minor Wisdom Trio! Minor Wisdom!
All right, so I have a feeling that some people are listening to this for some different reasons, but let's cut straight to it. I've got Alicia Green on this week, and hold on, it's coming up. 2, 1. You might be wondering, why does it sound different? It's because my mother-in-law is moving back to Houston, and for the third time now, going to be living with us. And so I had to move all of my stuff down to my wife's office, which is a echoey chamber on our first floor with glass French doors that everybody can see me through while I record this. And as I record this, it's 10:51 p.m. And I'm putting all this out there. So let's have a conversation. All right. So I posted something on Facebook a couple days ago. No, yesterday. Yesterday as I record this. Yesterday was my last day. And I'm sorry, Alicia, for this being the intro to your episode, but I'm actually, in full disclosure, people are going to listen because it's you. And so here we are. The intro's coming, a good intro. I posted yesterday on Facebook that I left Covenant and that yesterday was my last day. I gave them my notice on Monday that I was leaving. Some reasons are personal that will probably never come out as to why. And, I told them some of those reasons, but there are other reasons too that I don't know if they were contributing factors to maybe some of the there were some medical things, right? So we're not going to get in all those, but we'll call them medical things. And I decided a while ago that I don't know if this is right, and they know this. And the desk job part of that particular job was just not something I really enjoyed. And again, this is not news. I'm not burning a bridge. This is something that I told the boss, I told both bosses, and I needed to get away from a cubicle. And to be, again, completely transparent, when I walked up to that area during my interview and saw that I'd be in a cubicle, I immediately had a feeling in my stomach like, gosh, I don't know. It's not that it wasn't, it's no offense to anyone. It is not a pretty area. It's not a nasty area. It's not a dirty area. If anything, it can't be dirty because Sean at Covenant, the boss, does not want you to eat food or really have open drinks up on the second floor. And that's not a knock. I'm just saying it's meant to keep it clean, right? Meant to keep things nice and pretty and tidy. And they were, but it was still a cubicle. It was still like, you can go to IKEA and get these things. I don't know. Maybe that's where they got them, or Office Depot or something. But I'm not going to get into too many details as to why I left. Those will come with beverages and private conversations with those people that pay for that stuff for me. But what I can tell you is that you should still use Covenant. They have some really, really phenomenal employees there that are going to help you out, and they do really good work. They have a lot of pride. There's a lot of pride there, and that's a good thing. That said, it just wasn't a fit for me. It wasn't where I needed to be. What is a fit for me, where my heart belongs, is the classroom. And it maybe I was in a little bit of denial that that's the case, that that's where I should be, but it is. And it took this opportunity to help me realize that. Now, do I regret leaving a very good, great gig at the John Cooper School? Yeah, I do. But I wouldn't have known that this isn't my thing unless I did it, right? So So I had to do it. Now I'm going to do contract individual, self-employed labor. And I say labor, but it's not really labor, because the thing I have, and I'm going to get into this, but I have so many opportunities and jobs lined up between now and sort of the middle of April, and even some have grown into May, thanks to some really good friends. And speaking of good friends, when I posted on Facebook that I left, not only were comments made on Facebook, uh, but I have never experienced this before in my life, but my phone like literally blew up. And shame on me, I posted this right before I was about to mix audio for a production of Anastasia at Class Act Productions tomorrow. Or as I record this, tomorrow's the final performance, so not going to try to sell tickets to that one. But and so I got a phone call from somebody that shall remain nameless, and ended up having a long conversation with that person about certain things. I started getting people messaging me either via Facebook or privately messaging if they have my phone number, which everybody should now because it's on Facebook. Thank you, Mel. I do appreciate that. But I started getting overwhelmed with how many people were contacting me, texting me, messaging me. I had some people call me. I'm going to lunch this week. I have 3 meetings set up this week that did not exist yesterday at 6:00 at night, because I had those people reach out and say, let's talk business. Let's talk how you can help, how you can be a part of something. And that is flattering as fudge. It is, I, I feel like I have a wealth of knowledge that I can offer people, and I'm willing to offer people. However, I feel that way. I did not realize other people felt that way. I led a workshop, I believe it was last year at T-Tech, about imposter syndrome, right? Not imposter syndrome is a different thing, but imposter syndrome. And there are times when I feel like I have that. I think every human feels like that at some point in their life, but this made me feel really, really good. And I've got to say to those people that did reach out that said, hey, this school needs a tech theater teacher. This school just lost somebody. Or, hey, can you come out to my school to help me do X, Y, and Z, whatever that might be. That just rhymed. It was great. And I appreciate you guys. I appreciate everyone. I'll tell you this, I do have to feed my kids, I do have to make sure my family is taken care of. And so I am taking jobs, and I'm going to try to fit jobs in to places where jobs already exist for me, where I've already told an educator, hey, I will help you out. However, I'm also going to help these other people out. And I'm doing that not just because I want to help people out, but also because I have 2 beautiful daughters that I don't want to experience anything that my dad sort of had experience, or that I experienced when my dad lost his job, because I remember that well. And so I just want to make sure that that food is on the table, that they're getting, candy when they want it, or when I think they have earned it, whatever. But yeah, that's that's basically it. This is a long intro for a wonderful, wonderful, amazing person, Alicia Green, who I highly recommend for UIL design, theatrical design. You get Alicia to come out and do workshops with your students, and even you as an educator. Get her to come out. She's a wealth of knowledge. She is one of the kindest people you will ever meet. And I was very excited to have her on. It was a long time coming. We had scheduled a couple times to chat, but it just didn't work out for personal reasons. But I finally got her in the can. So got Alicia. I don't know how I'm going to record podcasts from here on out with people while I sit across the desk from my wife and in an echoey room that I'm not allowed to put my sound padding on. But whatever. I've got this week, and then next week I've got Jonathan Dorff, who most of you know, and I'll introduce him next week. But thank you for listening to this. Thank you for supporting me and trusting me, and those people that reached out so far. I'm still getting people. I had some more people today. So enjoy this week's podcast. Join the Patreon if in the future you want to hear the longer intros or ad free. Buy a Minor Wisdom shirt. Do all the things. Okay. Okay. All right. Bobby, I hope you're happy, buddy. I hope this is all for you.
I am a generalist. So I went to school originally to be an actor, and I got tossed back and forth. So I originally went to Northeast Texas Community College, and I was put on stage every time and, played every role that you could imagine. Our theater director, Douglas Hoppick, he was called Papa. And I tell the story now to my students when we're auditioning, that he would put his feet up on the chairs and take his shoes off and say, okay, there they are, knock my socks off. And so that's where I got started. I was there for 2 years and then transferred to Texas Woman's University and got to TW and got told, nope, you're not an actor, you're a designer. So my path changed at that point. Took all of the design classes that I could take, found a love for scenic painting at TW. And at the end of my time at TW, I wasn't prepared for what was next. We just graduated. They worked us until we graduated, and then it was like, well, what do I do now? So I had a friend that we had kind of gotten close to, and decided that we needed like an in-between. So we toured. I think we looked at 5 or 6 schools. We went all the way to Georgia. We went up the Panhandle. Somehow along the way to Kansas City Kansas State. We interviewed a lot of different places. We met Steve Strickler at Southwestern Oklahoma State University. And as we moved on, I just couldn't stop thinking about that program. And he said, he opened this car door and said, get in, I'll drive you around. And we had like a whole day where he was just showing us around town. He took all of my credits at TW, and I was able to get a second degree in communications from SWOSU in a year. So I just needed an in-between until I could figure out what I wanted to do next. At the end of that year, so when I got to Weatherford, Oklahoma, he was there with his best friend, Daryl Rodriguez. So they were a pair. And it happened to be, we didn't know at the time, it happened to be their last year together. Daryl moved on after that. And I was on stage every show that they had that year, and was told again, oh, wait, you're an actress. You're not a designer. So then my path got changed again at that point. I was in every show, but I was in all of the design classes. And what I didn't know at the time was every place that I've been at in my career has prepared me for what I do now, 25 years later. So at the end of that year, they hooked us up with University of Texas, El Paso at UTEP in El Paso. And I did grad school there, had a goal to be an actor, got my grad degree in acting, got to El Paso, and guess what? Oh, you're not an actor. So then I got into props while I was there. I think I did props at SWOSU. But at UTEP, I was there for 2 years. We were the last graduate group that they had at UTEP, and then they turned into a BFA program. So at the end of my 2 years there, I was like, I'm tired of going back and forth. I don't have the ego to be an actor. I mean, like, truly, I love it, but I don't have the ego. So at that point, decided to separate with my friend that I had, but we'd been together for a while, and got an internship at the Dallas Theater Center. So that guess at that point I met Maggie Booz. So I think she was after, like, internship in props after me at Dallas Theater Center. So I just got into props professionally. So then I kind of traveled. I did a couple of summers in Colorado with summer stock, and then ended up in Houston at the Alley Theater. I got to the Alley Theater and had another complete life change. So it was like every 2 or 3 years, my life has kind of changed. Got to the Alley Theater. Since I was the last to be hired, that year the recession hit and they started doing massive layoffs. And I was the most recent hire, so I was the first to go. I was at the bottom of the food chain. In that time, I met my husband, or well, what would be my husband. I didn't know. At that time, we'd only been going out for like 4 or 5 months. It's kind of a love story. So I guess at the end of the day, my career has been a love story. So I had to make a choice, because by May, I had already gotten hired at the Aspen Music Theater as the prop master, and then I got laid off. So I had to go to Aspen for the 3 months, but I didn't have a place to come home to. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a home, So I went on to Aspen, and it was like, well, the world will take care of me, however that happens. And by August, my boyfriend at the time had a conversation with me, and I said, what do I do? Like, where do I go? Am I coming back to Houston, or am I moving on? And like most professional people do. And he said, well, you're coming back to Houston, of course. I didn't have anything. Came back to nothing. So I came back to Houston. Our relationship moved on to the next level. And I started working at Home Depot. I worked at Home Depot for 9 months. I went back to school. I have a grad degree, but I couldn't teach. I went back to school to be a teacher. At that point, I decided that was the only thing, in Houston, that I could do. And then my life changed again. So my life has had several pivotal turning points. I think when I was in maybe second grade, like kindergarten, my mom jokes and says, like, I've always meant to be a teacher, but I never went to school to be a teacher. I never had, at that point, absolutely did not think that I was going to get into teaching. And it was not a backup, but it was kind of a backup because I didn't want to leave. Like, I knew that my relationship with my future husband, was special, and it was a once in a lifetime thing. And I needed to make a really big choice. And so I started trying to find jobs. That entire year, that 9 months, I went on 42 interviews. At some point, I'm going to throw out a name. I met Stuart Savage. We sat across from each other the year that he started working at Carnegie Vanguard. So I've met a whole bunch of people, and like every other theater teacher, theater world is so small, So every time that somebody would come into Home Depot, I would say to them, do you have a job? I'm looking to be a theater teacher or anything, like whatever. And it worked out. So there was one person that came back that worked at, I want to say it was Queensbury Theater, like in the Houston area. And said
Country Playhouse probably at the time, but yeah, Country Playhouse.
Yeah, it was Country Playhouse, exactly. Yeah. And she came back and she needed some paint. And we just started talking, and then she came back a couple of days later and gave me her card and said, I want to say this was on a Monday, and I was working the late shift, and she gave me her card and said, they need a technical director at St. Pius X High School this week. School starts this week. Call, the principal. On my lunch break, I had my sister get into my Google and type up, change some things and type up a cover letter. I sent it on Monday. I got called on Tuesday. I was hired on Wednesday, and I started school on Thursday. So yeah. So then my life changed again. So I was there for 3 years. Then it was time to move on. I was at Milby High School. That was my first public teaching position. I was the technical theater director at St. Pius X, and then moved on to be the head theater director at Milby High School. And I was, if you're in Houston, you know, like there was a bond around 2013 or so, 2014, and there were a slew of schools that they were renovating. Milby was one of them. My first year was the last year that they were at the actual, like the original campus, and then they made the entire campus go to Jones High School, and we were there for 2 years, along with like 2 other schools. So it was an interesting time. It was like every year we were at a different campus. In that time, there was a principal that reached out to me and asked if I could come in and do a scenic painting and an acting workshop for their kids. It was like an early college or not early college, but they went, if they had like an extenuating circumstance and they went to this school, their fine arts were only in the summer. So my principal tells me, I'll sign off on this, but I'm sure that I won't see you again. I don't want you to go because you're going to see the other side or whatever it was. And I was like, no, that's not it. That's exactly what happened. So then I got courted by a friend of mine. She was at Goose Creek Memorial, and it took some convincing because I didn't want to leave, and Milby was home, and it took some convincing, and she needed a technical theater director. And so by the end of the summer, she had convinced me to make the big move. And so then I was at Goose Creek Memorial for 5 years. At that point, then my life took another turn, and decided, so 3 years into that, she left and I moved up into the head position. And 5 years later, I moved to Temple. And this is where the story gets, it's kind of hard to talk about, but is, like you said, is something that we all need to talk about. We had gone through COVID. I think 2020 was my first year as head director. So I had 2 years, the year of COVID and then the year after, the year of masks. And at that point, I needed a change. And my family was going through a change, and it's a kind of major mental health issues within the family. So we decided to reach out, and I got hired at Temple High School. And what I did not realize in that, I was only there until January, but what I didn't realize was how much turmoil would happen at home and how stressful that move would be for family. And in January, I had to step down, and I had to resign. At that point, I was having, it's another pivotal, life-changing moment. I had immediate family members that were going through some mental health crisis. And then with the stress of the job, I in turn was going through mental health crisis. And I had to make a drastic change before something drastic happened, to be honest. And I know that there are a lot of people in our line of work that have stepped away. So at that point, with the support of my husband, I made the choice at the moment that I was going to look elsewhere and that I wasn't going to teach anymore, that it was that bad. And so I was talking to a friend in the area, and we were kind of, she's thinking about retiring. So we were going back and forth, having this conversation, but I wasn't sure if I was going to continue teaching or not. So fast forward to March. So I'm having interviews outside of teaching, which is difficult, to go through, because it's like, I'm looking at my resume. What have I done for the last 24 years of my life, 25 years of my life is just teaching. So how do I reword that, to make it look appeasing to the real world outside of education, or I'm questioning what else can I do? Like I'm a great scenic painter. I can do props like, and puppets like nobody's business, but what else can I do in corporate America? So at that point, I got a text message from the principal at Rogers High School. And he says, I hear you're off contract. And I said, yep, sure am. And he said, can you come in? I might have a position open. So that was on Monday. So here we go again. Tuesday, I get another text message that says, I might need you earlier than I thought. Because originally he was saying that maybe if something had happened, that maybe it was after by district. Then he called the next day and said, it seems to be moving a little faster. Whatever was going on with the theater teacher that they had, it's going a little faster than we thought. By Friday, I was signing a contract. That was the Friday before their district contest on Tuesday. So I came in on Saturday. Actually, I signed the contract on Friday, and then Monday they had to have an emergency school board meeting, so I could be a full-time employee for UIL called Paula. I was like, oh, what do I do? And Saturday rolled around. We were having a rehearsal. Monday we had tech. And Mark Piquel was our contest manager, and he helped, as much as he could. And then Tuesday we were there for contest. And the kids seemed like, man, it's like you have been here this whole time. And what I stepped into was August Osage County. And it was like, there's a reason why I haven't directed this play, up until this point in my life. Like it's so close to my own life. And so it was so natural. It just seemed so natural. Like I knew these people, I knew, and whatever they had done up to that point, I could get them to the finish line. I think it was 1 point away from being a really cool story. We were alternate, to district. But at that point, after the tears, that was a hard loss. Going home, I didn't know these kids. I had known them for 3 days, but it felt like I had known them forever. And they asked me to stay. I had an interview a couple months later just to make it official, but they asked me to stay. And it's like family. I know that Rogers has a really big legacy. A long line of directors, state directors. So last year was my first official year, and which I think is probably the reason why I'm sitting in front of you right now. So last year it was the first time I've been doing theatrical design, I want to say for the last 6 years. And when I came to GCM at Goose Creek, was the first time that I started doing theatrical design. And last year at Rogers, they had never heard about theatrical design at all. So when I came on, I told them, "Oh, you're going to get to stay, because I'm here. I'm not, you know me. I'm a humble person. I'm not cocky, except when it comes to that. That is my theatrical design is my wheelhouse. I love this contest." And my principal laughed at me and kind of rolled his eyes and said, okay, so we found out that we had 9 competitors that were state qualifiers for the first time in Rogers' history. And when we got to state, we had 6 state medalists. And at the end of the day, 2 weeks after state theatrical design, Paula calls and says, "You are second runner-up for the entire state." So that's why I'm sitting in front of you. That's my story.
Yeah, I don't know if that's why you're sitting in front of me, but
I don't know.
It definitely helps. It definitely helps the situation, because you and I met doing TXETA stuff. Yeah.
There's sprinkle some other things in there. We were co-exhibit chair, I guess, for like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, for a while. But that's how you and I met. So first of all, I appreciate the honesty and your being kind of vulnerable about the details you shared about the temple situation. You don't need to go into more details, but I do kind of want to unpack the world of, if you don't mind, the world of kind of, burnout's an easy way to put it, but it's not just burnout. I feel like that's kind of an elementary way to describe what really is happening, because it happened to my wife, it happened to me. I'm sitting at a company now. I'm not in the classroom. My wife, same thing. It's just one of those. Now, that said, and I've said this to my current boss, and it's not a secret, and he actually listens to this podcast, but I will find my way back to the classroom. It's not something I'm done with at all. It's just
you are a teacher at heart.
Right. Yes. And it's just something I need a break from. Whereas if you talk to my wife, she's done. She's not done. She's not done. But if she'll tell you that. So, but I say all that to say that, the in my mind, the issue has not ever been really, we address it, you and I, the people in our situations, but there's only so high, so high on the food chain we can go to get it really addressed, right? And actually get to the root of the problem. Now, politics aside, I have a feeling I know why there are some issues in our school systems in at least the state of Texas. However, I would love to know from you, and I don't want you to get yourself in trouble, but what you think is kind of the root or the core or whatever other hyperbole you want to put on it, of kind of why all of the past maybe 2-3 years we have made our voices heard. And you and I are both friends with Mel Edwards. She's another person on that side. There are quite a few rather influential and definitely tech and design directors. What do you think, if we're just kind of here, hitting the ping pong back and forth, what do you think is kind of one of the reasons for something like this right now?
I think it's twofold. One part of, I think Mel talks about how there aren't, how to say this. I'm a generalist, so I know a little bit about everything. I can have a conversation about things, but I'm not an expert in a lot of things. And that's not a negative thing. I don't see it as that. We as theater teachers have to know a little bit about everything. And sometimes we are 2 steps, 10 steps ahead of the kids. Sometimes we're a step behind, depending on where we are. Or if they're teaching us, or we're, just learning whatever it is, the class period before. And that's not a bad thing. That's just where we're at. And I didn't go to school. I don't have an MFA in construction. I didn't go to school, and she doesn't either. Like she did cabinets, I think, which is great. That's awesome. That's not my background. I've taken several technical director positions because there was a need. And like at Milby, I taught tech. At St. Pius, I taught tech, but it was 2 totally different experiences. So by the time I got to Temple, what they needed was an actual technical director. And that wasn't me. And I didn't realize that until after I got there. And I don't think there's any shame in that, to say that the job that I accepted I wasn't qualified for. At the end of the day, what they needed was not something that I could give 100%. And I think when you go into an interview, for one, they ask you about strengths. People don't want to talk about their weaknesses. You don't talk about weaknesses in interviews. It's hard for me because I am honest about where I'm at. So especially with that particular job, I'm going for something that is, at looking in looking in hindsight, is just out of my reach. I can get there, but and I could have gotten there, I think 100%, like in my situation, coming after COVID, like, and the mental health that I deal with and the mental health that my son was dealing with, that just, it blew up. I mean, and the move, and on top of that, then, and that year I was starting grad school again. I started like an online MFA program. So I was just like, it was too much. So I think like part of it, to answer the original question, part of it is like, I didn't go to school for that. So my experience on my resume is so sprinkled that it's not, that particular type of program needs a technical director, and possibly because they do so much, they need a shop foreman. And it's not the way that program was running. They're very successful and they continue to be successful. They don't have the money they have money, but you know what I'm saying? They don't have the resources to have two people in that job. That job is one person that's being expected to do 2 or 3 people's jobs. And I think overall, that's part of the problem, is that, so that's the second part of why I think is, what's wrong right now is that there's so much burnout that I like personally, I know that other people are like this. Like, we're expected to give 100%, 125% of ourselves at all times. And then we come home to families and then expected to be who you are at home. And whether, I'm sure, I don't know what the data would be, but I'm sure that we have high divorce rates as teachers or as theater people, and not just like in education, but in professional theater world. I'm sure there's a high divorce rate because you have to find someone that is so supportive of your lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. It's not just a career. It's not just a job. And I've had jobs, I've been at 5 different places, and each of them have their own needs. And I am the expert at the end of the day, and I'm supposed to know all the things. So if I don't know, I have to go home and learn it, because that's not what they're paying me to do. But also, or go to training or go, whatever. But then also, I've got family load that I have to put it on the doorstep and leave it outside. And I'm not that type of person. I can't do, it's hard. I haven't figured that out yet, to leave. I'm getting better, but it's hard.
Yeah. I'm going through a little bit of that right now with somebody I work with, about like, at no fault of theirs, they don't have children. And so the when I say, hey, I'm not available because I have, like, for instance, soccer practice, I've made it a goal as a father to be as present as I possibly can. And if something is in the way that I deem not very important, meaning like going somewhere and, making sure a light is on, I'm going to go to soccer practice. But, those types of things. And it's just explaining to people that don't necessarily have the strong family life that it sounds like you not only have, but also you still seem to want to grow, right? Or get better or make better. To explain that to somebody that doesn't necessarily have that, again, no fault of their own, it's tough unless you're just kind of in the middle of it. But
there's a lot of theater teachers that I know that have, they bring their kids to work.
Yeah.
I did too. I do. It's hard because then your babies want, that's a boundary that you have to set.
Yeah.
And that's a boundary you have to go through to figure out that that's a boundary.
Yeah.
I've been at places where, like, my oldest child, he was just at an age where he didn't want, to be candid about it, he said he didn't want to be around the theater kids because they take my side.
Yeah.
Because he sees that they love me just like he loves me, but it's in a different way. They're not my kids. And that also, I'm going to be honest, like, emotionally, as a theater person, it's hard to put everything. I was just having this conversation with another theater director like two or 3 days ago about a kid that was have like a full ride scholarship to a theater school, which was very rare at TXETA a couple of weeks ago. He got a full ride scholarship, and this kid is kind of on the fence about it, about whether he's going to go. And the theater director was like, "No, you're going. Like, you need to go to this. That's a rare thing, to give a full ride scholarship, especially for theater. You're that good." And he's got his own personal, and that's what I was saying, like, that kid has his own personal reasons, and you support that student. But at the end of the day, like, after this 5th school that I've been at, that's where the boundary has to be, because emotionally I have been in those places where that kid, or those kids, that become friends later in life, that it's like, I'm so invested in their lives, their choices, and I have to remind myself I'm not their parent at the end of the day. And I think that's also not draining. That's not the word, but it's just like, just to realize they rely on you for so many things. And we see them more than we see our own families. They see us more than they see their own families. So naturally we're going to, vibe with these people, or we're going to have this relationship with these people, or these little people, and they're not ours. Yeah. At the end of the day, they're going to make their own choices, and they're going to do their own thing.
You mentioned you mentioned that like your son can see these kids, or these students that aren't necessarily that much older or younger in some cases, are feeling a certain way about his mom, and I understand that, and it's funny because coming from the adult side, the teacher / the parent, I get personally proud of my daughters for small things, the small achievements, right? But that's not to say that when we're proud of our students, it's less than. It's the same pride. It's the same amount of, you still feel that same feeling. It's just, you don't feel it for like a couple days ago, just seeing my youngest daughter, like, kind of get her fashion together, right? And like figure that out. Okay. Made me proud. I was just like, that's so cute and so cool. And I was so happy. And it kind of like got me kind of emotional.
That's something to be proud about.
Yeah. So, cause she didn't get that from her dad, but I mean, like, that's a small thing. I don't know if I would feel that same way for a student, but like when that student, like you said, gets a scholarship, or ends their time with you with something that's big, gets a goal or achieves a goal that they've been striving for, you still feel that same proud parent type feeling. And
it's like that on the other side too. Yeah. I mean, like, if they're making choices that you're like, oh, I wish you would.
Disappointment.
Yeah, right. And a lot of times from the relationships that I've had with some of the students, it's like sometimes that's even bigger than that disappointment, is bigger than if their parents had that. I mean, maybe their parents have been saying the same thing. I mean, it's just like when we take our kids to clinics, it's like, I've been saying that this entire time, know. So, yeah.
Oh, you've never said that before. Yes,
right.
Yes, actually,
I have. I have all these notes.
12 times in my yellow notepad. I've actually written it down.
This one's underlined.
Right. That's pretty funny. So, you never mentioned high school or like your time in that. I'm assuming because of where you ended up going to college initially, and then ending up in UTEP and Texas. All that you were a Texan.
Yes.
Okay. So were you raised in the one act play world?
So I've had lots of, like, every 2 or 3 years, my life like completely changes. So that I've just kind of gotten used to it, I guess. When I was, I guess the day or two, the weekend right after my freshman year ended, my mom pulls up in the driveway with this huge U-Haul and says, "We're moving. By the end of the day, you'll say goodbye to your friends." We moved so I grew up in Mesquite, and went to North Mesquite High School freshman year. And then my parents moved us to Sims, Texas, which is halfway between Mount Pleasant, Texas, and Texarkana. So I stuck out like sore thumb. Like, I'm from Texas, but oof, I was the city girl in the 1A, 2A, in the middle of, I think they have a flashing light and a post office in a school that's all combined with the elementary, middle school, and high school are all on the same campus. So I graduated from James Bowie High School in Sims, and I wouldn't call that home. I mean, like, love them to death. I wouldn't call it home. I was a city girl in the wrong spot. So I think now, I was like, looking back, I think that's why I kind of fit in with the Rogers area, because I have a little bit of both, like a background that goes back to my generalist, like I've been everywhere around Texas anyway. So I just kind of traveled every 2 or 3 years. I was somewhere else.
So, good. Yeah. I mean,
sorry, I didn't answer your question.
Well, you did. The one act play thing. Yeah.
So I moved, and they gave me okay. So this is the story that I tell everybody in class, especially kids that I've never seen before. So they gave me an option, accounting or theater. Like, I had to have an elective my sophomore year, and I'm really bad at math. And so accounting was not the way I was going to go, but I was super shy. I mean, like, very, very shy. One of those kids that doesn't talk during school and would talk my mom's ear off when I would get home. So I got, I think we had five kids in one act class. There was one theater class. It was so small, and it was the English teacher that taught theater and Spanish. And they were going to, I think we had 3 seniors and me, a sophomore, and another junior. And when the 3 seniors graduated that year, they were going to do away with the theater department, or the theater class at James Bowie. And we rallied together, and we talked to the principal, begged the principal, please, if we get signatures, can you please have this class next year? And we had like 25 kids in the next year, so they kept it. And I heard this last year, they advanced to bi-district. They have picked it back up, and it kept going. So, yeah.
So I want you to thank you for saying that, because also, I guess we're Benjamin Buttoning this this interview.
Yes.
So when did you sort of loosely mentioned kind of when you sort of got bit, I guess, by the bug, but when was it that you knew that, like, I really want to do this theater thing? It really seems kind of fun.
So that's been a couple of times in life. So I was a sophomore,
Today,
right, a sophomore in high school. And I think that first year, I mean, because I'm a bigger girl, or a bigger lady, or at the time, like, typecast. I was the mom. I was the grandma. I was Santa. That year for Christmas, I was Santa in the play.
Wow.
And then, so that next, so for one act, because we only did 2 shows, it was a Christmas show and one act, we did Gloria Mundi. And I played this crazy lady, this lady that she was in a mental institution. And I just spouted off facts the entire show, and sat on stage the entire time, and could be as kooky and as wild as I could be, and I loved it. I mean, like, super shy, and then all of a sudden I could be somebody else. I could be like, whatever I didn't like about myself, I could change it, or so at that point, that's really when I was hit by the bug,
right.
bit by the bug. So then I went to even though it was community college, I still got a full ride scholarship to Northeast Texas Community College, and I was in every show that they had that year, or the 2 years that I was there. So I was in Lost in Yonkers, I was in Arsenic and Old Lace. Like, it was just fun characters. I mean, I went back and forth. Like, Lost in Yonkers was one of my favorite. I mean, like, being grandma it was so fun. But in, like, an emotional way. I don't know. She was like she's kind of nasty and mean, but I guess that's where I got bit, and then just kind of got tossed around back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then what bit you about theatrical design? Like why are you so passionate
I'm so
about
passionate about it. Oh
Yeah.
man. I want to say when I was at UTEP, I took a script analysis class and in grad school, and that I'm not a very big reader. I realized when I was an adult that I've, like, looking back, man, I have ADHD like really bad, and I should have. I don't think they had the resources when we were growing up that they have now. So I totally 100% would have been on 504, to help me out when I was. But because everybody thought I was smart because I was quiet, they didn't know that I was struggling. So when I got to grad school, it was whatever that the professor, the way that he set up script analysis, like, really, I don't know, it was a repetitive nature of it. And it was the particular book, I can't remember, it's like script analysis for actors, designers, and directors. And it asks different questions, but it's the same question like over and over. And every chapter is like, comes to the same conclusion. So you can get the seed of the play. And that class just lit my brain on fire. I don't know. I mean, like, I'm not a dramaturge, but script analysis in particular, I just really, really got. And when we got to, I guess that first year that I did, I did theatrical design, was Cats. I actually had a conversation with an 8th grader today. We had a workshop with Daniel Gamble. He came to our school today. And on the way out, this poor child was talking about how wonderful she thought Cats was. And I'm like, get out of my face. I love you, please.
Yeah.
That year was bad. And I didn't know what I was doing. It was the first year. I only had one kid that was doing theatrical design. And it didn't get anywhere. We got our notes and, whatever. Then I moved on to GCM and had maybe 4 or 5 other kids. We still had no qualifiers, nothing. Like, it didn't go anywhere. And something just clicked. I met Rachel Gomez. Oh, the next year. It was the next year. I want to say it was at TXETA when we were at Galveston before we went to Dallas for a while. But I met Rachel Gomez, and she is like a kindred spirit, and she's got a cool vibe. And I met her. I was helping, in the exhibit hall, and we were putting up all of last year's winners, or the previous year's winners, and we just got to talking, and it was just like, man, I'm looking at this all wrong. It's about the seed. It's about, and I'm reminded of grad school. It's about the justification paper, and so that next year we had, I want to say 6. We had a group that got to, nope, that's a lie. That was the year after. We had 5 or 6 that got to state that year. And then at that point, I don't want to say this. So I had this set designer that was Raisin in the Sun in Clybourne Park. And this set designer did everything that you'd think that he needed to do. And we were competing at Division II, and we get to states. We had, 5 or 6 state qualifiers, and this one set designer, every person that walked by his board was like, oh my gosh, you're going to win. Oh my goodness, you've got such good stuff. You're like, and he learned with me, how to do a ground plan, and how do we do, like, he did a model. And and this was a kid that he was a friend of a friend and just kind of like stuck around, and then said, hey, I want to be in the theater class. Hey, I want to be in production. I want to do tech theater. And then never left. So we thought, going into awards that year, we've got this down. And they started calling people's names. And then they got to number 6 and number 5 and 4 and 3 and hadn't called his name. And we're like, oh my gosh, he's number 1. And then he didn't get his name called at all. And then, that was a really hard ride home. Tears, I mean, they didn't quit, but I left that competition that year wondering why did that just happen? That particular year, the number one set design individual, the ground plan was done in matte colors. And that lit me up inside. Why is this happening? So I went to TXETA that next year and Summerfest and sat in the meetings, and I wanted to be an advocate for my students at that point. I approached Rachel and said, what can I do, to help? And she mentioned that there was a committee that would be meeting in the summer. So they have an advisory committee that meets. So I've been on the state advisory committee for theatrical design for the last 5 years. And at that point, I started to make sure that it was fair. I started to make sure that it was equitable, and to make sure that the standards that are being taught in the professional world and the standards that are being taught in the college world of design is what we're teaching and how we're judging this contest. So I want to say that there's maybe 8 or 9 of us that have been, in the past like 5 or 6 years, we've met every summer, and we help Rachel write the prompt, and we put all that together. Like there's somebody that does the set. I mean, like we kind of split it up amongst the group. So once I got that the justification, once I truly understood that the justification paper is really like the core of the whole design, I started to see students that were more, like at that point, then we were at state every year, for the last 5 years. And we've had, state winners and people on the stage. And then this last year, like with Rogers, we had 6 that had medals, by the end of it. And it was like, I know I had parents at the booster that would come back, and I think at the end of last year, my principal's response was, weren't we just supposed to dip our toes into the water? And I told him, I said, I told you, you're going to get people. I don't know how many, but I'll get them there, as long as they're going to meet my effort and meet my energy. And they did. And we had more kids get Letterman jackets for the first time in the last 15 years at Rogers for theater. Sophomores that were, qualifiers. And I think it's that justification paper. It's that you go back to the script. You have to justify it. If there is a line in the script that says this, then you can't argue with that. So yeah, I've had kids, they don't know how to draw. Like last year, I think out of the 9, I maybe had 2 that had drawn illustrated before. So,
well, that's good.
I don't know if that answered your question.
No, that did. I just, I haven't really gotten a deep dive on theatrical design. I only did it a couple of years in my 13 years of teaching. It wasn't around at the beginning of my time teaching, but I just, I just never. It's not that I don't like it. It's just something that I never really got into, partially because, like you just said, I didn't always have students that were artistically superior. But the way you just described it, it sounds like somebody that has more of that dramaturgy background, would maybe be more successful at it than just like somebody that's really good at design but doesn't pay too much attention to the details almost.
Yes, I have had, the year that we did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I had an art student that was in JV, and man, his renderings were beautiful. There's only been a handful of kids that I have seen that really truly knew, like on the high school level, that really truly knew how to do like Prisma colors. And I'm not an art teacher. I know the basic, like if you know principles of art or principles of design and elements of art, then you can have a conversation about it. That's the basic knowledge that you need. There's no shame in tracing. There's no until you learn how to render. There's no shame in using digital work if you don't know how to do Prisma. I've had a 6th place winner that it was matte colors or colored pencils. Like, it's not. What I do appreciate about the design is that the judges that she brings in, and some of them are the same, that she's had for the last couple of years, but then a lot of them are different, from all walks of life. Like, some of the judges for this contest have been theater teachers and are now doing other things, or still theater teachers. Some of them are professionals, and some of them are like college level professors. They all understand that every person every competitor is coming from a different background, a different story. And like the year that we had COVID and the year after, that was really difficult, because people were at home and they couldn't do makeup design. They couldn't have different actors. So there's nothing saying that you can't do it on yourself, just to show the idea, and articulate, whatever your design ideas are, your concept. So I think because I guess the justification paper is the only thing that isn't really released, so that year after Clybourne Park and Raisin in the Sun, that was the only thing that I could think of that caused the student not to place.
Right.
So that's what I went back to, and I looked at, okay, how good is this paper? And when I say how good is the paper, it's not how well it's written. How is it articulated well? Is it justified? And that's what I started focusing on, when I teach this in class, is you've got to do the script analysis. You cannot just, with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, that student, the art student, I don't think he ever read the script.
Right.
So he was trying to make this design look right, but then it's like, but why? What's the answer to the why? And the why has to be there. Like that's a large chunk of the rubric, is the why.
So I want to get you out of here on this. Early in the conversation, you mentioned why you were contemplating leaving or why you did leave and all that kind of stuff. You don't need to speak on your situation, but what I do want you to do is, and we already sort of touched on this earlier about like, why is this happening, but focus on the advice side. So if somebody's struggling right now, it's October, they're barely into the year, right? Yeah. Right. So then talk to yourself, what type of, you are a wise and mature enough person to kind of, see this thing from the outside looking in, even if it is your own experience. But give some sort of advice, maybe focus on younger teachers or older. I don't care. It's your advice. And talk about sort of, give that football coach pep talk at halftime. You're down 3 touchdowns and you want your team to come back to win. What is it that you can provide to sort of pep that teacher up?
I think number one is take care of yourself first. It's like when you fly, that's the first thing that they say, is put your own mask on before you help somebody else. And I'm grateful for the people in my lifetime that have seen me struggling and not necessarily asked like, hey, how you doing? Do you need help? Because that, like, when you're in the thick of it, you don't see that, you don't hear it. So I think before it gets bad, I think you've got to put on your own mask. I go to therapy 3 times a week. We have, I don't go to therapy. I go to therapy once a week. And my youngest son, he deals with anxiety, and he goes to therapy, and then we have couples therapy. So there's no shame in that. I started seeing this therapist when I was going through the biggest hurdles at Temple, because it was through the school. So I want to say the first like 6 or 7 were free. There's no reason that you shouldn't reach out and say, hey, I need somebody to listen to. It's somebody that is subjective, somebody that's got your back, that has you, number one in mind if you can't have you in mind. And that, that's put on your mask. And just to talk, just to have somebody, that's neutral ground to talk to. Also, I mean, like, it's really hard on your family at home if you're constantly griping about work. So you've got to find, I mean, whether that's go get a coffee before you walk in the house, or go for a walk, or whatever that is, you've got to find time for yourself that replenishes the bucket. If the bucket is dry, the kids are going to take everything you've got that you're willing to give. But if you don't have anything left to give, you've got to refill it somewhere, somehow. I'm teaching this year. I started teaching theatrical design clinics, and at the end of the day, it's a fundraiser for my department. We're going to Texas Thespians for the first time, and it's an expensive bill. And I tried to figure out, there's only so many beef sticks and popcorn bags you can sell. So I brainstormed and tried to figure out, like, how else can we get money? How else can we brainstorm? Or how else can we, fundraise? And I went to Summerfest, and somebody asked me, I think Frisco ISD approached me and said, hey, do you teach clinics? Do you teach workshops? And I know a good friend of mine also does theatrical design clinics, Mindy at Stephenville. And I didn't want to take her. I don't want to take away from her. But man, that replenishes my bucket. I can't even explain how much that, I'm also helping my department, but personally, because I'm into theatrical design so much, and I could talk about Hadestown. Like this year, we're talking about Hadestown, and we can have. There are so many enriching conversations at the clinics that I'm having that replenishes the bucket for me. So I would definitely say reach out, look into the therapy. Look into having that person that you can go to that has your back, that you can talk to. I think they've got people online now, that you don't have to actually go in. But also then find whatever that is that you, man, just light your world on fire. And I think, for me, it's theatrical design. I love the relationship, the friendship that I've gained with the friends, so going to Summerfest, going to Texas Thespians, for me, going to conventions so I can have those conversations with people that are like-minded, with people that understand what I'm going through. Please, Maestro, Rick Garcia's Maestro training, that, all of that, do all of that, because that, Camp on the Coast, anything like that, I would suggest picking up at least once a year so you can go and, in an intellectual way. I feel like it's a really good place if you get there with the kids and you can have an intellectual conversation with those students. It's yes, that's at the top. These kids are teaching each other. That's where you want to go. But if you're not in that place, you got to reach out for it. You got to find your friends, find your Blakes that you can see every once in a while, once a year at convention or at competition.
So this happens a lot. This is when I thought I had ended the conversation with Alicia, but we kept chatting, and she realized, I have some more things to say. And so I rolled tape. So here's the real end of our chat.
So I think the main thing that I learned about my experience over the last 2.5 years of leaving a job, and I'm not someone that walks away from a job easily. I'm not someone that quits. Especially in the middle of the year. I think the world has your back. And at the end of the day, sometimes we don't know what's coming for us. And you have to, it's like stepping stones. You have to take these steps in order to get there. And I wish I had known that. That would have been more comforting, like when it was going on in the thick of it, that I have to, the only way out is through. And that got me through a lot of hard times in the past 2.5 years. And in more ways, you know, with my career, with my job, and at home. You know, we were in a position where my son was not in a good state mental health wise, and he doesn't live with us anymore. That's been 2 years of things that people don't talk about at all. I mean, you're talking about burnout. You know, we don't talk about that. We know it's happening, but we don't talk about the why. And with the mental health, you know, people don't talk about that at all. So, I mean, that really, like, the only way out is through most of the time. And especially with people that deal with anxiety, if you put it off and you put it off and you put it off, that's not helping anything. I mean, like, I wished I had known that like 2 years ago. I wish I had known that my entire life. That, you know, with anxiety, if I put it off, then it's not, I'm just delaying the inevitable. You know, you have to deal with it. You have to face it head on, and you got to be honest with yourself. So sometimes you're going to take a job that you're not qualified for, or sometimes you're going to take a job that it's just not the right fit, and it's perfectly okay. It's totally okay to admit or to say, you know what, this is just a stepping stone to get me to somewhere that I'm supposed to be. I was only supposed to be here for a chapter in my life.
Minor wisdom.